we go. We're good. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for your people who come together at your feet to learn from you through your word, to want to study, to want to know, to want to comprehend, ambitious for all the right things. Thank you so much for these people. Thank you that we come and journey together to dig through an ancient text that is so still meaningful and so full of life and full of wisdom, and leads us to you, our King, our Savior, our Father. So may we be enriched by this whole process, and may we know you well. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. Cards on the table. I'm very tired today. I have not got a lot of sleep this week. So if I'm a bit foggy, I apologize. My wife's been working late, and that basically means I debrief with her after work every day, and I'm not getting to bed till like 1:30. And she's like, you don't have to. I'm like, come now. I have to. I get home, she's like, so I did this at work, and there was this client, and this happened. It's like, okay. Like glossy eyes. Yeah. Oh, that's fun. But that's marriage, right?
Yeah.
Have to be there. Anyway, we finished the flood narrative, right? Okay. Now we're going to talk about the weird, crazy circumstance that happened after Noah got out of the ark. A few things to note, though. Noah comes off the ark, and God makes a covenant with him after he offers up the sacrifices. And he makes it not just with Noah, but he makes it with Noah and his sons and everything that's on the earth, that God would never destroy the world in the same way that he just did. But he did it for the same reason he destroyed it in the first place, right? The inclination of the human heart is on evil all the time. I'm going to wipe you out. And now I'm not going to wipe you out, even though the inclination of your heart is evil from your youth. And so it seems to me that what the Lord is saying is, I see a pattern. This is going to keep playing on repeat because there's something broken in the human heart. And so if I pick this route, flood route, I'm wiping out and doing a massive reset every couple thousand years, right? Because that's just the pattern. Or I choose to do something else when humans reach their apex of wickedness, right? He doesn't not judge them. He's just not going to do full out reset. Does that make sense? So that seems to be God's dilemma. And we don't know how it's going to play yet, except for he's made a decision what he's not going to do. So we already know what he's not going to do. No more a great reset, wipe out every living thing. So then what's that going to look like if things hit their apex of wickedness again? And we don't know yet, but that at least is setting the stage. And then God blesses Noah with almost a word-for-word blessing that he gave to Adam and Eve, right? So the implication of him saying, be fruitful, multiply, fill the land, rule it, he's the new humanity. Noah is the new Adam. He's portrayed narratively like, we're starting again. We're starting fresh. This is the new Adam, right? And so that's the picture being painted here. So then the sons of Noah going out of the ark with him were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan. That's a little side note we should just keep in our mind. It is from these three sons that Noah and all the land was spread out and scattered. And Noah, being a man of the soil, began to plant a vineyard, and he drank from the wine. Before I carry on, Noah was a man of the soil. What was Adam?
He was a man of the soil.
He was a man of the soil. He's literally from the soil. He's a man of the soil. He was a farmer. Cain was a farmer. So there's this idea like the first human was a farmer. Now the second human was a farmer, right? So what does he do with his farming talents? He decides to make alcohol. So he plants a vineyard, and then he drank from the wine, and having become drunk, he lay uncovered within his tent. Now Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and he told his two brothers who were outside. Then Shem and Japhet took a garment and put it on their shoulders and walked backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were backward. They didn't see the nakedness of their father. And when Noah awoke from his wine, he knew what his youngest son had done to him. And then he said, Canaan is cursed. Servant of servants he shall be to his brothers. Blessed be Yahweh, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japhet, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. So this is a weird, enigmatic passage. What is happening here? Let's go all the way back to Genesis 1, or 2, or 3. You've got humans placed in a pristine state. It's new. There's no obstacles yet. And they're giving a lot of authority to steward something, right? And then Adam and Eve, through deception, do a foolish thing, right? What we often call the fall. The Bible doesn't call the fall. It doesn't even call sin. But it portrays it as a foolish act that leads to death. But then you have Cain, who does an actually sinful act by murdering his brother. Okay, it's foolishness that leads to sin, and then it's like a criminal act against his own family. So foolishness leads to a criminal act against family, and then later down on Cain's line, it leads to something that's like cosmic in terms of its scope and scale. You have Lamech, and from Lamech then come the sons of God, and it's like a cosmic rebellion. Foolishness, criminal act against the family, cosmic rebellion. That seems to be this theme. Now here we have Noah, who brand new, right off the boat. He just came off the boat. He's the first immigrant. And he does something foolish. Not that he planted a vineyard, but that he allowed himself to get so drunk he doesn't know his right hand from his left hand. Like, this isn't just I'm tipsy and smiley. That's not what drunkenness seems to portray in the scriptures. The scriptures portray drunkenness as to be in such a state that you can't tell up from down. So this is like completely, utterly sloshed and passed out, right? Where somebody can take advantage of you and if you have no clue what's happening. So then that leads to, he did something foolish. Criminal act against his family is about to happen if we're following this pattern. And if you notice, Canaan is the one who's highlighted. Ham, oh yeah, the father of Canaan. Why is Canaan the one? Why is Canaan the one cursed? When Noah says he knew that what his youngest son had done to him, but then he curses Canaan and not Ham. So this is the mystery, the enigma, what's happening here. So let's go down a few rabbit trails, and I'm going to let you make the decisions and then tell you where I stand. And I'll just tell you, it's probably way worse than you ever imagined. It's really gross, but it seems to be the most fitting description. First one, he walks in on his dad naked. He sees his dad naked, and he's mocking him, and he goes and tells his brother, It's a peep show. Dad's being an idiot and he's naked in the tent. And it's just an act of shame. He shames his father. He's not honoring his father. He does a shameful act. And so his father curses. But he doesn't curse Ham. He curses Canaan. What's Canaan got to do with it? What's his grandson have anything to do with his dad walking in on his grandpa naked? Doesn't seem to fit. But that's what at the first plain sight reading, that's what it looks like is going on. Now the other one is this word nakedness, exposing nakedness. There's nothing within Genesis that ever uses this term. But there's a tendency for the biblical authors in later books to reflect or use words that are in earlier writings so that you go back and you do almost like a retro commentary. Now, the Torah is one narrative of separate writings together. Like, they are technically separate books, but they're all like a library within themselves that relate to one another. Okay? They're even like poetically structured like a chiasm. So there's this book in the center of that chiasm called Leviticus. And I think it's chapter 20 or 18, where it talks about a list of prohibitions in terms of sexual activity. You're not to sleep with your aunt or your sister or your mother or your brother or whatever, right? But the word for to sleep with somebody is do not uncover their nakedness. If you uncover their nakedness, that's a bad thing. So for a brother to uncover the nakedness of his sister means to have sex with his sister. To uncover the nakedness of your aunt, or to uncover the naked, so I'll go there. So there's a sexual connotation there, which then leads people to look at this and say something shady went down in that tent where Ham went in and raped his father. Okay? Gross. However, that brings up another problem. Again, why is Canaan cursed? Makes no sense, right? What does Canaan have to do with that? It's a gross act. It's a higher level of humiliation and dishonor. But it still doesn't make any sense of Canaan. So now here, I'm sorry guys, this graphic's gonna get worse. But this is the best explanation I've heard. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen, but it makes the most sense and ties everything together. In Leviticus, it says, do not expose the nakedness of your father, for that is your mother. Do not expose the nakedness of your uncle, for that is your aunt. So in other words, to expose the nakedness of the man is to sleep with his spouse. To expose the nakedness of your father is to sleep with his wife. To expose the nakedness of your mother is to sleep with your sister. So in this idea, what's happening here is Ham is taking advantage of his father's drunkenness and raping his mom. Now, why is he doing this? Because he wants to be first. It's a new humanity. He's the last of three. He wants to have a lineage that has some significance. So if he can bear children through his mother, he has a chance to have a lineage that is first. And the first child of that union was Canaan. And so Canaan is cursed. Because what Ham tried to do to advance himself, to make himself first, through violence and through dishonor, God is cursing that. So the reason Canaan is being cursed is because he was the product of a person in arrogance trying to be first and doing some deep evil on the way. So that's the best explanation that I've heard. It's the most disturbing explanation that I've heard, but it makes sense of every factor involved, including the wanting to be first part, because right from the get-go, you had the serpent, and then you had Cain, and then you had Lamech, and now you have this. It seems to follow the trend that's already being painted, makes sense of the curse, makes sense of the terminology of the nakedness, and then just makes you sick.
It actually
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have the ESV. It says, if a man lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
So,
So it's the repeat of that phrase. That phrase is a euphemism in that context, right? So when you're reading it in Genesis, it doesn't seem like a euphemism. You're just like exposing his nakedness. What could that mean? And then you read Leviticus and you're like, well, I've heard this term before. And you go back and you're like, no, you didn't. And then, right? Like, and so it's just there. And it's disturbing, and it should disturb you. Because the Bible gives you a very honest and raw portrayal of the best and worst of humanity. It really does. It doesn't pull punches. It just says this is what sin does to people. This is what it's like. This is what wanting to be first produces. This is why the first will be last and the last will be first. Like, that's what this is all about. Like, when you try and advance yourself, build yourself your own reputation, build your own name, take what you think is good, define good and evil on your own terms, brings death.
it's completely different in the KJV
Okay,
and a few others.
let's read it. What is
Thou
that?
shouldst say to the children of Israel, whoever he be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn to Israel, that giveth any of his seed unto Molech, so it's different.
You mean the chapter is different?
No, the verse, like, the first one I looked at, it was in the ESV.
Oh, like there's an extra verse in the King James Version?
No, I think I messed up, sorry.
Okay.
I lost the original. It was Leviticus 20, right?
I believe it's 20, yeah.
I just found it.
Leviticus 20, right?
So actually, I've got Leviticus in Leviticus 18.
Okay.
And it's funny, it starts off 2 verses, one after the other, about the father. So in verse 7 it says, do not dishonor your father by having sexual relations with your mother. She is your mother, do not have relations with her. And then in 8 it says, do not have sexual relations with your father's wife. That would dishonor your father. So it actually repeats it one after the other. And it's the very first ones that God says, do not do this.
NIV. Okay, but what's the 18 verses what?
18 verse 7 and 8.
Okay, you want to look that up in yours? And you've got the King James Version, right? Look it up in your King James. I want to hear it.
So what is it again?
18 what, David?
18, 7 and 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
7 and 8.
Yeah. ESV keeps with the
They're
uncovering
both about the
nakedness.
father and the mother.
Right, so this one says, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is your father's nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your sister. It's your father's daughter or your mother's daughter, whether brought up in the family or in another home. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your son's daughter or of your daughter's daughter, for that is the nakedness of your own nakedness, etc., etc. So it wasn't 20, it was 18. But there you have it. It's there. Oh, look at you. Good job.
Should I read out of this version?
Sure.
Or is that what, right?
Yeah, give it a
So
shot.
I'm reading out of the Complete Jewish Bible that Damien referred for us to have, but there's a word here I don't know how to pronounce. So anyways, you are not to have sexual relations with your father, and you are not to have sexual relations with your mother. She is your mother. Do not have sexual relations with her. You are not to have sexual relations with your father's wife. That is your father's, and then I don't know how to pronounce this word. Prerogative?
Prerogative.
Oh, how come I'm, all right.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, basically, it's my wife. Like, you don't get my wife.
And then it says also with your sister, the daughter of your father, the daughter of your mother,
Yeah,
whether born at home or elsewhere.
right. So what you've noticed is that the NIV and with the CJB, they've done an interpretive call, right? So whereas the ESV wanted to keep the original wording as closely as possible, you've got the NIV, KJV, or whatever. What they're doing is they're just saying, well, why don't we just tell everybody what it means, right? And so they do the homework for you, and they just put sexual relations because that's the euphemism.
The Christian Standard just uses the word intercourse.
Yeah.
All of them.
Which one was this one? New American Standard?
The Christian Standard.
Christian Standard. So that's what's happening here. Is that's also translation philosophy. It's like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Some people want literal interpretations where it's like word for word, trying to bring out all the idioms as it said in Hebrew. Other people is let's just translate it, like right across the board. And so that's what's happening, and it is what it is. But it does help to do certain studies when you have the repeat of the original words, because then you get to make those cross references in English that don't normally come out, right? Because had you read your NIV, would you have ever made that connection? Never have made that connection, right?
No.
Right? So, and that's where it's helpful. So a good point of study is when you're doing like an actual Bible study, use multiple translations. And when you read a word that 5 translations say 5 different things, what that tells you is there was a complex issue involved, and they had to make a decision. They had to make a call. And so it's helpful to read several different translations to help fill out that aspect. So anyway, so this is the criminal act against the family, right? And so then Canaan is cursed because of it. Because the implication is Canaan is the byproduct of what happened. Which is also gives you this picture of like, this is probably years, an event that took over like chunks of time, all condensed into one quick cryptic narrative, right? And so that's what seems to be happening here. Yeah. And I find it interesting because they call Ham, the word is katon, the less important or the younger or the smallest. It's giving us this idea of like the one who wanted to be the greatest, he's the least. Like, oh yeah, Ham, the least of all the sons, he did this one thing, right? And so all of this stuff is tying into this underlying premise. He wanted to be the highest. He wanted to be the greatest. He wanted to be first. He wanted to take. And so now, as an afterthought, he's the least. His offspring is the cursed. Right? So do you see, like, everybody wants to exalt themselves will be humbled. That seems to be the seedbed of what's happening there. Yeah? Okay. All right, let's move on to less disturbing things, I hope. Okay, so, all right. After the collapse of the sky ocean, or after the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. These are the generations of Noah. So this is now we're entering into a new movement. We just finished one movement, and now we have that Toledot formula. These are the generations of, and we're about to enter something else. And now we're going into another genealogy. And I wish we could put it on the wall. I can't. Do you guys have a copy of this one in front of you at all? Or no? You do? Okay. Well, let's just follow along. We'll see what we can do. Okay. Shem, Ham, and Yafet. So that's 3 sons. Were born to him after the collapse of the sky ocean. Now we got the sons of Yafet. Gomer, Magog, Madai, Yavan, Tuval, Meshech, Tiras. Okay, now we're going to the sons of Gomer. Ashkenaz, Rifat, Torgoma. And then we have the sons of Yavan. Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, Danaim. From these, the coastland peoples spread out, each one by his own language, family, and nation. Okay. Then the sons of Ham. The first one is Cush. That's translation. The translation of Cush is Ethiopia. So the first son's name is Ethiopia. Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, Put, and Canaan. So his sons are Ethiopia, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. Now the sons of Cush. Siva, Havilah, Satva, Ra'amah, Savtecha. The sons of Ramah, Siva, and Dedan. Now Cush, Ethiopia, fathered Nimrod, which means, I used to think it meant hunter, but Nimrod means hunter in English. Nimrod in Hebrew means the rebel. And he began to be a powerful one, or a Gibborim on the land. And he was a powerful hunter before Yahweh. For this reason, there became a saying, like Nimrod, a powerful hunter before Yahweh. So, this person, if he's a warrior, what does he do? He kills people. If he's a hunter, what does he do? Kills animals. So, he's a powerful person who sheds blood, right? And so Nimrod, a powerful hunter before Yahweh, the beginning of his kingdom was in the land of Shinar. Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. And he went from the land of Ashur, which is Assyria, and he built Nineveh, the city of Rehovot and Kalach, and Rezin, between Nineveh and Kalach, the great city. Now Mitzrayim, or Egypt, fathered the Ludim, the Anayim, the Lehavim, the Naftukim, as well as the Patrushim, and the Kasluchim, from whom came the Pelishtim, which are the Philistines, and the Kaftorim. Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn Chet, along with them the Yevusi, the Amori, the Girgashi, along with them the Hivi, the Arki, the Sini, and this is, I'll keep going. Parenthetical side. Along with them the Arvadi, Samadi, Hamati, and after this the families of Canaani spread out. The territory of the Canaani was from Sidon, heading in the direction of Gerar as far as Azah, or Gaza, then in the direction of Sodom and Amorah, or Gomorrah. Adma and Tzvoyim, as far as Lasha. These are the sons of Ham by their families, by their languages, with their lands, and in their nations. Okay, so I'm going to pause there before it gets to Shem again. This, if you've noticed, this sounds a little different than the other genealogies, right? A little bit. The first genealogy was talking about descendants. This grandson, this grandson, this grandson, or this son, this son, this son. And they seem to be like names of a person. If you've noticed, there's a shift. It's a mix between the names of people and the names of a people. Do you notice the shift?
And cities.
What?
And cities.
Like what? What would be the cities? Oh, like how Nimrod planted cities. Yeah. So that's just giving you like, oh, Nimrod. Oh, right. You know all these cities we know? That's connected with this guy. Right. So, but it's like there's a guy named Sidon, right? or Sidon. That's a city of the Phoenicians in the northern part of Israel. So it's a city-state. It mentions Yevusi, Jebusites, the city-state of Jebus, which became Jerusalem. So now it's not talking about just particular persons, but the people groups that came from those persons. So what you're seeing here is called, what's the word? It's lost on me now. Literary geography. That's the word. This is literary geography. So what's happening is it's giving you a list, and you're supposed to, if you know the layout of the land, you're supposed to go, oh, they would be like saying, and this person gave birth to Alberta, and this other person gave birth to Yukon, and this person gave birth to like PEI, and you're like, oh, I know where that is. So that's kind of what's happening here. And so it's painting a picture of the whole land of Canaan by mentioning the names of these children. It's like the Tzedonim, and then it's got these people here all the way down to Gaza over here, all the way down to like Egypt, and then Cush, which is Ethiopia. It's giving you a layout of their geography, right? So that's what's happening with this genealogy. It's painting a picture of who are the players in the biblical story that we're going to be encountering. Here they are. Right? Anyway. Also to Shem, the elder brother of Japhet, once were born. And he fathered all the children of Ever. That means Hebrew. And the sons of Shem, Elam, Ashur, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. Now the sons of Aram were Uz. Geez, do you know who is from Uz? Job. Chul, Geter, and Mash. Arpachshad fathered Shelach, and Shelach fathered Ever. Now Ever, or Hebrew, was born 2 sons. The one name was Peleg, which means divided, for in his days the land was divided, and his brother's name was Yoktan. Yoktan fathered Almodad, Shelef, Hatzramavet, Yara'ach, as well as Hadoram, Uzzal, and Dikla, as well as Oval, Avimel, Sheva, as well as Ophir, Chavilah, and Yovav. All of these sons of Yoktan, whose territory was from Mesha towards the direction of Sepharar in the hill country to the east. These are the sons of Shem by their families. Wait, didn't we just talk about Shem? So we had a lineage of Shem up to a guy named Yoktan, and then it just breaks, and now it goes back to Shem again. So it just seems like what's happening is it branches, and then this one just ends because now it's not important. It's like, yeah, that's all you need to know about that. Let's go back to Shem again, and we're going to restart this genealogy in another direction. We're going to do another branch. Okay? These are the sons of Shem by their families, languages, with their lands, by their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noach by their generations, with their nations. And from these nations were spread out and scattered in the land after the flood. I must scrap that last paragraph. It is true, there's something to that, but I'll get back to it. Now, before we get into this particular narrative we're about to, when it talked about these people groups, it had a sentence at the end. And it kept repeating it. These are the families of so-and-so by their generations, with their nations. No. These are the sons of so-and-so by their families, their languages, with their lands, by their nations. Okay, I'll repeat that again. These are the sons of whoever it is, by their families, by their languages, by their lands, by their nations. What is the portrait here? There's a people group that is being created in this list. They each have their own land. They each have their own families. They each have their own languages. They have their own national identity. Okay? Just let that sink in for a second. It's talking about diversity and difference, and they all are unified in terms of they all come from the same place. They're one big happy family, but there's uniqueness and creativity and difference within this big human family, yeah? I just want you to put this on your shelf space for a second, because what we're about to read, okay? Now the whole land spoke as one, and their words were one. And they set out east, and they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they settled there. So what's happening here? Is all the land spread out according to their families and their languages and their nations, or did they not spread it at all? And did they only speak one language? So here's your first problem. One, either this particular narrative that we're about to embark on is going to tell you how this previous list came about, or it's going to say that this was like that and this is a unique situation. So we're going to read it and we'll just explore those two options. Now, before I go, there's Shinar. Does it sound familiar? Who built cities in the land of Shinar?
It's tied to
Nimrod.
Babylon.
Nimrod went to the land of Shinar, rebel,
Yeah.
went to Shinar, he made Babylon, Akkad, Erech, all these places, right? Okay, so these people settle in the land of Shinar, and they said to each other, "Come, let us make bricks, and let us fire them in fire, and we will substitute brick for stone, and asphalt for clay." So they made technology. They made bricks. And they said, "Let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose head is in the skies, and let us make a name and a reputation for ourselves, lest we be spread out over the face of the land." So God said to Noah, "Be fruitful, multiply, and do what?
Spread out.
Spread out. Fill the land." Now you got a group of people who said, "Let's not do that." Right? And in the unfortunate case with what Ham was doing, what are these people doing? Let's build ourselves a city. Let's make ourselves a reputation. Does that sound like a good idea? So they're disobeying the command of God to spread all over the earth, and they want to make a name for themselves. And they're making technology. So there's that too. And Yahweh said, "Look, the people are one, and they speak as one, and this is what they've begun to do. Now nothing will be impossible for them in everything they plan to do." So that's a really good compliment from the Lord. If you're united, and you think alike, and you act as one, nothing's impossible for you. That's an impressive compliment. The problem is, if you do it for if you do it for good, you can conquer the universe. If you do it for evil, that's a bad day, right? And then God is saying that what they're doing, because of who they are, if as a united people, this is not going to be good. It's going to be bad. And so, let us go down and confuse their speech so that a man cannot hear the speech of his neighbor. So Yahweh spread them out from there over the face of the land, and they ceased to build the city. Thus he called her name Babel, because it was there that Yahweh confused, or balaled, the speech of all the land. And from there Yahweh spread them out over the face of the land. So the word spread here is on repeat, actually for this whole, ever since Noah gets out of the ark to this point. The word is spread or scattered. And it's like, all these nations were scattered everywhere. They were scattered, and then they go, "Let's be one people in one place at one time." And God says, "I'm going to scatter them." And so this is a blessing and a curse. God is doing what he wants. He wants nations. He wants to spread them out. And he makes it happen. So that's a blessing. He fills the land, whether they liked it or not. So by doing that, he confuses their language. So I don't understand you. Hey, but I do understand you. Hey, let's hang out. And then they go do their thing. Here's a lot of things to unpack about this story. One, it's possible that this is the retro commentary on the Table of Nations, on the how these nations came about. They are now different languages, different families spread out. That's a perfectly reasonable assumption. The other one is, this is forced uniformity. This is, we're making you now all become uniform. You have to speak the same language, you have to think the same ideas, you have to have the same culture. It's colonialism. So it's possible that this part of the bad aspect of this is these guys are going to all these nations and forcing them to become one under their empire. That's another way you can see this. And that sounds to me like, I want to be first and I want to rule the world and you guys all need to be like me. And that sounds really familiar to our history, right?
When you play God or opposed to God's will, chaos happens.
Yeah.
That'd be a pre-Egypt.
It'd be what?
Pre-Egypt.
Pre-Egypt,
That's what they
yeah.
did.
Yeah. And so now both of those are very viable ways to read this, right? You can say the retro commentary version, or you can say God destroyed their plans to conquer the world. Right? Like it could, and I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know, but I will say this. There's this line. It's a really neat line. Let's go confuse their speech so that a man cannot hear the speech of his neighbor.
Who's that speaking?
That's the Lord.
That's
Okay?
what I'm saying.
Now, you go to Acts 2. The Holy Spirit descends, and they all start speaking in different languages. And then there's Jewish proselytes from all over the world, and the places mentioned are mentioned in this Table of Nations list. And then they said, what is going on? These are Galileans, and yet we hear them speaking in our languages. We hear them speaking Egyptian and Arabic and Persian and Greek. So what you see is a group of people who, they're listening to a crowd babble, right? And yet what everybody out here hears is their language being spoken to them. And then you have a couple of people who's like, no, I just hear babbling, y'all are drunk, right? But this is, the book of Acts is a reversal of the Babylon narrative in that one moment. So I just find that fascinating. God, now I know this is going to come out of left field, but if you jump ahead to Deuteronomy 32 at the end, it's another Table of Nations, and it's what God refers back to this situation is that this is God's divorcing of the nations. He's like, you guys have consistently rebelled against me. We're not friends anymore. You want your gods? I divorce you. They don't want me. These ruling angels don't want me. You guys don't want me. You can have each other. And so God divorces the nations, and then he puts all these sub-deity things under the control of those nations. Like, you guys do you. I'm picking Israel for my own. And so, because in Deuteronomy 32, it says God separated the nations according to the B'nai Elohim, according to the sons of God. So God organized nations under these rulers. And he's like, fine, you do you. So it was considered the divorce of the nations. And then in the book of Acts, God is retaking the nations for himself. So that's the portrait, the connection that's being made. Anyway, there was another thing I wanted to say about this. Okay. This is my personal opinion, just me. Babylon is this picture of people who are united in speech, in technology, in ideology, in culture. They're unified and they can do amazing things. They can do it for good or they can do it for bad. And it culminates where they want to make a name and a reputation for themselves that is self-focused. Look at us. Look how awesome we are. We are great. We are the greatest. And then God had to intervene in a major way. Yeah? My assumption is that we are living on the precipice of New Babylon. We have the internet. How much more united can you get in your speech and your culture, in your way of thinking, and in exalting your own self with your technology and wanting to make a reputation for yourself? It's like the way the trend is going with the world, it's globalization. And with the internet, I now know what's happening in any part of the world. All somebody has to do is post it, and I know, right? And it's creating, like, there's culture war right now, but I can't see it taking very long before everybody just starts to think the same and have the same language, have the same way of operating, and then thinking transhumanism or whatever, it's the exaltation of the human ideal. It's like, what is the word? Complete carnality and human wisdom on everything you think, on everything you do. I think it sounds very much like what Justin's talking about, where if everything you think and everything you do is human oriented and human thought, you are marked. You are marked by that. And I just think that if we continue the way we're going, I think when we hit the apex of that, Jesus is going to come back and say, okay, you've had your fun. Humanity has done the greatest that humanity can do, and you've exalted yourself, and you've done great evil, and my turn. That's my personal opinion. It just feels like that's the way things are going. Like this is a new Babylon that we're living in. Or at least it's on the trajectory to it. Whether in my lifetime or not, I don't know, but it just feels like it's getting there. Take
that
what
unity you're talking about, to me, seems like it is a orchestrated unity,
yeah.
but leaning more and more towards coercion and maybe eventually force.
Perhaps, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, well, they have, a lot of that's already happened. If you go into the oil and gas industry, a lot of them for many years had different accounting systems, and they didn't all talk to each other. Now there's one accounting system that they're all adopting. So I can automatically take my AR and put it into your AP directly, just electronically. And they can
Right.
do cash right back.
Right.
So they're all talking one accounting system.
Which this is the double-edged sword. That sounds super convenient.
It does.
And if you weren't evil, that'd be awesome.
My theory of the Tower of Babel is that it was like a university. It was not building. And the tower that they were building was they had figuring out a way to get to heaven. Exactly what they're doing today. If you go to look at CERN, that's what they're trying to do. They're actually bringing up demons. That's what CERN is for.
Okay.
Bring up demons.
Well, you do bring up an interesting point, which is that there's an aspect of this that is happening, because the word Babylon means gate of the gods. Now, I would probably take deference for you on the tower part. I think they were building a ziggurat, which was literally an ancient temple that was steps to heaven.
Yeah.
That was their portrait of what that meant. And I also think it ties into the book of Daniel, where he built a great big statue in his own honor, and the head was in the heavens. I just don't think that's a coincidence. So, you could be right. University, the whole motivation is to, if we can't access Eden, we're gonna bring it down, or we're gonna reach it, like whatever it is. There's definitely an aspect in which they're trying to. That's the cosmic rebellion that I was telling you. You had the fool of Noah, then you had the criminal act of Ham, and now you have the cosmic rebellion, because something's happening here that's not just humans wanting to be arrogant. You're right. There's an invasion of heaven, so to speak. This idea that they can even reach heaven, which I think is preposterous, but meaning like humans are so arrogant they think they can actually pull something like that off. Right? But you're right. I think there's an aspect in which it's exactly the motivation, right? So that aspect of it is not without merit. Oh, what was I gonna say here? No, I think I have it all. Yeah. How are we doing?
Good.
With
Yes.
with the Tower
Oh,
of Babel.
that was just a thumbs up?
Oh,
Okay, sorry.
With the Tower of Babel, do you think that it was all of the descendants of Noah's sons that came and did this, or was it just like Ham and his descendants?
It doesn't say. It doesn't say. Here's what it does say. Now the whole land spoke as one and had words as one. And they set out from the east, and they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there.
Yeah.
And then they said to each other, let's do the things. And that's where the confusing connection comes, like what's happening here. Because the previous thing, everybody's separated and has their own language and their own thing going on. But now suddenly they're all together. So that's just a mystery that you gotta hash out with your own mind.
If you go to the New King James, it says now the whole earth at one time.
Right. Right. The reason I put land is because Eretz, the implication of Eretz is like what's under my feet. Right? And you could say earth and it would be right. The problem I have with earth is when we read earth, we don't think what's under my feet, we think globe.
Yeah.
Right? Now that picture didn't come into our mental consciousness until like the 50s. Right? So the world for most of human history didn't think like that. Right? We do, but they didn't. So it's just not helpful when you're adding your own pictures to a text that never thought like that. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
That's all.
Makes more sense.
It makes what?
More sense.
Oh. So now these are the generations of Shem. This is where I was going with the. We had the generations of Shem that ended in Yoktan and just ended. I think that's how it was. Now we have generations of Shem again. Okay? When Shem was 100 years old, he fathered Arpachshad. 2 years after the flood. And after he fathered Arpachshad, he lived 500 years and he fathered sons and daughters. Now we're just going to be on a repeat. Arpachshad lived 35 years, fathered Shalak. After he fathered Shalak, he lived 403 years and he fathered sons and daughters. When Shalak lived 30 years, he fathered Ever, or Hebrew. And after he fathered Hebrew, he lived 403 years and he fathered sons and daughters. When Hebrew lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg. And after he fathered Peleg, he lived 430 years and he fathered sons and daughters. Now this is where that break was in the last genealogy. Peleg and Yoktan separated and we got the Yoktan version, not very long, and then it just stopped. Now we're back to Peleg again. And now we're carrying this line through Peleg. When Peleg was 30 years old, he fathered Reu. And after he fathered Reu, he lived 209 years and he fathered sons and daughters. When Reu lived 32 years, he fathered Serug. And then he lived 207 years and he fathered sons and daughters. Serug lived 30 years and he fathered Nahor. And after he fathered Nahor, he lives 200 years and he fathered sons and daughters. When Nahor lived 29 years, he fathered Terach. And after he fathered Terach, he lived 119 years and he fathered sons and daughters. When Terach lived 70 years, he fathered Avraham, Nahor, like Nahor Jr., and Haran. So do you see that line splits? One goes to whoever, and the next one goes all the way down to Abram. That's interesting.
So when it's Abram, are you talking about Abraham?
Guess we're gonna find out.
Oh.
Yes. Yes. These are the generations of Terach. Terach fathered Avram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran fathered Lot. Now Haran died in the presence of his father Terach in the land of his kin, in Ur of the Kasdim, Chaldeans and the Babylonians. The Kasdim are the Chaldeans and the Babylonians. Avram and Nahor took wives to themselves. The name of Avram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Yakshan. Now Sarai was barren and had no child. Terach took Avram his son and Lot, the son of Haran, and his grandson, Sarai, his daughter-in-law, and his son Avram's wife. And they went out together from Ur of the Kasdim, going in the direction to the land of Canaan. But they came to Haran, and they settled there. The days of Tarak were 205 years, and he died in Haran. And Yahweh said to Abram, you, go out of your generational land and from your father's house to a land I will show you. And I will make you into a great nation. And I will make your name and reputation great. And you will be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And all the families of the land will be blessed because of you. So this new genealogy carries all the way down to this guy named Terah, who has a son named Abram, who has a wife named Sarai, who's barren, and they don't have kids. And then God comes to him, and it's interesting that what his wording is. I'm going to make you great. I'm going to build you a household. I will make you a nation. I will give you a reputation. In contrast to Babylon, who wants to make themselves into a great nation, who wants to make themselves a reputation, who wants to reach heaven on their own terms. Right? God comes down from heaven to Abraham and gives to him. Yeah? So, when we go through this whole scenario, you find God to be the great giver to the point where he allows humans to rule and do their own thing, but they have choices and they make bad choices, and God just revisits and revisits and revisits. But this spiral of humanity keeps going down. And God does this great reset, and then the Babylon just shows that it's going to do it again. So now we're at the point where there's a second cosmic rebellion. The first one ended in a flood. The second one has no ending yet, except it leads to Abraham. Which then tells you this is God's way that he's going to do. His choice was, I either destroy the world every couple thousand years, or I find a different way. And God's way is take one out of the many and bless them and covenant himself to them and work with them, and through that to bring blessing through the back door, basically, to the whole world. And that's the end of Genesis 1 to 11 in a nutshell, like what God's plan. This is the introduction to the whole Bible. And this is where the introduction ends, of like God is going to start to work with small groups of people in a concentrated manner so they can then turn around and be a blessing to everybody. And because God doesn't want to just wipe out the world all the time. He's going to do the painful, slow process of working with broken people and closely in order to bring about blessing.
So chronologically, this is like 1900 years before Christ we're at now.
Yeah, Abraham, it's funny, it's because most people pin Abraham at 1948 AD or BD, like what it, yeah, 1948 BC. So yeah, 1900s, you're right.
I was just thinking about Bible history and how it lines up with world history.
Right. Usually, in the scholarship that tries to do that, they can't really pin anything until the Exodus era, or actually even early Bronze Age era. Like when they get actual records that they can date, is the like Saul, David, Solomon.
But they do have artifacts.
They have artifacts, yes, but I'm just saying, like actual recorded data, they're not getting that until David, like David.
All
and
that
Solomon.
must have disappeared.
Well, I'm just saying, like those, like the official, like political records, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have to pack up very soon, but I have a question. What do you guys want to do? We're technically done 1 to 11. What do you want to do? Do you want to keep rolling?
Why not? Everybody keep going, raise your hand.
Yep.
Okay. So is this enough people for me to just show up the next Sunday and we'll just keep rolling?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have my own translation, so we'll be jumping just back into the Bible. We could. I'm down. We'll just keep going until we don't want it. Yeah. But if you don't want to, you're free. It's been a jam. It's been fun. I thank you, by the way. This is as life-giving for me as it is for you, probably. I love talking about the scriptures and diving into it, wrestling with it, hashing it out. So,
Well, I thank you too, because it's just been so interesting, and I just love going through the genealogy and all the names, because I struggle reading. How do you pronounce these names?
Oh.
And just hearing you say it, it's like, wow, that is so cool. So thank you for that.
That gets stuck in your throat.
all right. So next week, I'm on worship, so there will be no class. But if you guys do want to continue this, it'll be the week after that.
I think you heard it.
What?
I think most people put their hand up.
So
I
sorry.
say most people put their hand up.
Yeah. Yeah. Just David did it. Just David didn't. He doesn't love us anymore.
I gotta think about it.
No, it's fair.
Because, like, I love